What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Renegade Marquee on the Renegade Pop Culture Podcast Network. My name is Mike. I'll be your host for this evening. Join me, we've got Haylee.
Yo.
And making their Renegade Pop Culture debut, please welcome Legault.
Hello.
And today we are talking about Stranger Things Season 4, Part 1. And we'll talk about that release model in a minute, but first I want to get your general thoughts on the series as a whole. Legault, I'll start with you. Your general impressions of the series prior to season 4.
Prior to season 4, I think it is a phenomenally made show. Not the most unique thing in the world, but has absolutely lovable characters that keeps the story very compelling.
Haylee, what about you?
So I love Stranger Things. I'm pretty well aware that it's got some glaring issues with it, but I feel like it captures a really interesting vibe that not a whole lot of shows do. And I echo that the characters are amazing, and that's kind of what keeps me going back to this show.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. What hooked me in was the admittedly kind of gimmicky, like the gimmicky appeal of, you know, a show set in the 80s, inspired by the mix of Stephen King meets Steven Spielberg. But what kept me in through even the quote unquote bad seasons were the characters. And even like seasons 2 and 3, I still thought were not perfect, but the highs I thought were really high, and the lows were not nearly as bad as everyone makes them out to be. So now we are in the 4th season, which just is probably like one of the like biggest seasons of television, probably since like the last couple seasons of Game of Thrones, in terms of the size, the scale. I think each episode cost like 30 million to produce, which is a lot. And then of course the episode lengths are all well over an hour, with the last one being like feature film length. So first of all, general impressions on season 4 before we dive too deep into spoilers. Haylee, what about your general impressions?
So I think for me, this would be the best season of Stranger Things. I know there's going to be people who are like, what about season 1? I'm like, no, I think this is better than season 1. I don't think this is perfect. There are some super glaring issues with this. It's just kind of like the theme of Stranger Things. It's like, this is great, but there's some super glaring issues with this. But I think that they were able to use the longer runtimes really effectively, in that I loved 3 out of the 4 or 4 out of the 5 storylines going on at the same time. And they grouped the characters together well to like maximize how well those stories worked. I think it does hit a lull point in episode 6. I think 6 feels like the episode that they have every season where everything's just kind of spinning its wheels. And I question the choice to split this into 2 parts, especially because the ending of episode 7 is just kind of there. But otherwise, like I was so clued into this. It was very riveting. And I feel like they're finally doing stuff with characters that they haven't done anything with in a while, which is part of why I liked it so much.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with that. And in typical me fashion, even though this was a longer sit, I still had to get the whole thing done in one day. My original plan was to split this up in 2 days, but I was just like sucked right into the story that I kind of just wanted to finish it all in one sitting. Legault, what about you?
This definitely felt like the most expensive season of Stranger Things by far. I really appreciate how they like really elevated the story, because season 3 where it left off felt like a completion, like they could have just ended it there. So I was a little concerned coming back, like how are they going to continue the story in a way that makes sense? And I think they did a really good job of it. And I deeply love this. I'm on my second watch, but kind of like what Haylee said, there is of the groupings I really like, but there's one storyline that I'm utterly disinterested in, but all the rest is fantastic.
I'm sure we'll get into that one in a second, but
I hope we agree on which one it is. I really hope, because I feel like no one else agrees with me on this one.
we'll see once we get there. But yeah, just echoing what you guys said, this is probably my favorite since the first. Although I'm probably one of the bigger defenders of season 3 because they made a bunch of Back to the Future references, and that's one of my favorite movies. But this one, I really like the way they leaned into the horror aspect even further. I think the big bad is far more compelling, probably because he's more sentient than like the Demigorgon or the Mind Flayer. And also, yeah, like you guys said, the different character interactions and even the new characters. One in particular, I'm sure everyone can guess which one's my favorite. It's Eddie Munson. So let's now actually dive into each of these different storylines. So the main one, obviously, are the kids in Hawkins who are investigating, all of these different killings of. The villain's name is Lord Vecna, or just Vecna. How do you guys feel, first of all, of the design of Vecna? I think the way they crafted this creature is they did a really bang up job. Legault, what about you?
I really felt like he looked to me really familiar. He looks a lot like this character Molasser from Michael Mann's The Keep, which is a very, very specific movie that I doubt many people have seen. But he looked kind of like that, and kind of like a crossover between the uncle from Hellraiser, like after he'd had his skin flayed. It's very intimidating, and I was so surprised who the actor that they had in all the makeup. I was really surprised that was actually him, because he seems way too small to be that intimidating, but he absolutely is.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised by that too. Like it's not just him in the makeup, but it's the voice too. That's
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Haylee, what about you?
Are we going like full bore spoiler now? Or are we still trying to kind of keep back a bit?
Screw it. We'll go all in on spoilers.
Okay, because I actually had the opposite reaction, where I was like, as Vecna was wandering around, I'm like, this guy looks really familiar. And as soon as they showed the orderly, I was like, oh shit, duh. It's the only dude that hasn't been accounted for in the credits. Of course it's him. I think the design of him is really effective, though. I think it's a kind of a good combination of the thematic elements that have already become associated with the Upside Down, like the vines and the interlacing, like inhuman sort of like putty like qualities of like the Mind Flayer and the locale of the Upside Down, while also making them seem very human in some regards. Kind of reminded me of the creature from the Black Lagoon. Definitely has that sort of feel to it, which I think works really well with the fact that the Upside Down is kind of shown as a spore-filled sort of swamp of horrors in a lot of regards. I'm amazed that that's a practical effect. I looked that up. I thought for sure he would have had all the ping pong balls on him, but that was makeup, and I think that really adds to the effectiveness. Like, just the practical effect of it all makes him feel a lot more real when he's threatening these children.
Yeah.
And just Bauer's just an incredible actor. I feel like he's not had the most steady career, so it's kind of hard to forget that he's done a lot of really impressive work, and this is some really impressive work, especially with the physicality of the character.
I was looking up earlier where I knew him from, and it turns out he's kind of been in all the young adult stuff. He was the young Grindelwald in both Deathly Hallows and Fantastic Beasts, and he was also a character in in Twilight.
I
And
forgot he was in Twilight.
and he was in 2 different Shakespeare projects. He played a character in the Roland Emmerich movie Anonymous, and he was in I don't know if you guys remember that, like, that limited series from 2017 just called Will.
I don't.
I do not.
But he's also in Sweeney Todd.
Yeah, that was his first role.
Mhm.
But yeah, I thought he did a really good job in this.
Mhm.
So we have the kids in Hawkins, and one of the new characters that we meet is the leader of the D&D club, the Hellfire Club, Eddie Munson, who is played by, let me get the actor's name.
Joseph Quinn.
Yes. If you know me, you know pretty well why he'd be my favorite character, because of all the heavy metal aesthetic that he's got going on. I just took one look at him in the season 4 trailer where he's where he's like shredding in the Upside Down. I'm like, yep, this is it. I knew this was going to be my favorite. What about you guys?
It actually took me a little bit to warm up to Eddie as a character. I think one of my only issues outside of the main glaring terrible plot line that I didn't like, that we'll talk about later, is that his intro is very oddly written, considering the arc that he goes on through the rest of the story. It's almost like he's too much of an ass in the beginning. So for a couple of episodes, I was sitting there wondering when the table was going to flip and we were going to see his actual personality again, kind of a thing. But once he started actually going on the journey with the rest of the kids, I was like, oh, okay, they were trying to misdirect us and it just kind of came off weird. And then I was like, okay, I like this guy. Because at first I was like, oh, this is just neuter Billy, and I missed Billy. Like, if they were going to do this, just figure out a way to revive Billy. But that's not what they were going for. I think the actor does a really good job with portraying Eddie's theatricality. It would have been easy to like not sell that very well, especially in the actual D&D game, and he did a really great job with that. And I think it's a hard character to get right and to nail kind of the emotional beats of. And I think the actor Quinn, he did a really good job. This is part of why I hate where this season ended, because you could tell based on the stuff happening with him in the last episode that in the next, whenever the next 2 episodes come out, he was really gearing up to be a huge part of that, and we're really finally starting to get a sense of what Eddie wants out of this and where his trajectory is now going to lie. And then it's just like cut off, and I was like, they picked such an unsatisfying point to end this season. But yeah, I would say I went lukewarm to good on him. So he's not my favorite of the new characters, but I'm sure he'll grow on me just like Steve grew on me.
I will concede though, like watching the show, I was a little unsure. Like his introduction, like the scene in the cafeteria, that was a little bit off. But once we actually watched the campaign itself, I think that's when he really kind of found his voice. Legault, what about you?
Oh, see, I see it very differently. He definitely is my favorite new character, but his intro in the cafeteria where he's lowering his voice to read the article on DDD, that's a very conservative spin on it, while, I Was a Teenage Werewolf by the Cramps were playing. From the get-go, I'm like, okay, this is the kid. This is the guy. And then from there, he's just a spaz who gets wrapped up in this thing that is way too difficult for anyone to believe. And he's just trying to fight for his freedom. I'm here for this. Let's go to Mordor. He's such a sweetie. And I need him to be vindicated.
That being said, I'm going to be super mad if he dies. Even though I'm not the most sold on him, because that's just like, I'm like, don't kneecap this character like you did with what's his name with the slushy from last season. Like, God, what was his name? Alexi? No.
Yeah, no,
Alexi.
it was Alexi.
Yeah, Alexi. It was Alexi. Okay.
No, I agree with that. Like, I really don't want them to kill off this character because he adds such a fun energy to the core cast.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's good for Steve to have a motivation besides babysitting children. And I think Eddie does provide some sort of counterpoint to Steve's constantly just like exasperatedly following everyone around. And Nancy's, I'm going to put my nose in everything and then I'm going to get hurt or trapped or whatever. And it's just like, so it's nice to have a kid that is realistically acting like, oh my God, this is not safe. This is bad. I'm afraid. I'm going to run. I don't know what to do with this, with the information I'm being presented, and I'm scared of it.
Now, the other new character we were introduced to was Eduardo Franco as Argyle, who is Jonathan's stoner buddy in California. You guys have both seen Booksmart, right?
Yes.
I actually have not.
Oh, okay. Well, he kind of played a similar character in Booksmart. So when I saw him pop up in this, I'm like, oh, okay. So that's what he's here for. And honestly, I dig it. I like what he brings to this subplot of the show. Lego, what do you think of Argyle?
He's just really great comedy relief. I think the character's really fun. I love his relationship with Jonathan. I think Jonathan, kind of more than Steve, really needed someone to work off of rather than just being worried about Will all the time. And I love the reference because basically he's just the driver. So it's really kind of referencing Die Hard in that. I think he's kind of fun. Not up to Eddie's level, but still solid.
Haylee, yeah, I was just gonna ask, since you haven't seen Booksmart, what did you think of this actor? If this was your first impression of him?
Oh, I thought he was great. He was the one where the second he came on screen, I was like, okay, I know this is a fairly stereotypical character, but he's doing something fun with it and is actually conveying some sort of nuance and relevance in his performance, which I found was it was really endearing. I'm glad that Jonathan has a friend. Because I agree fully with what Lego was saying, is that Jonathan is one of the most stagnant characters on this show, and he still kind of is. But thank God we can break him out of the Will and Nancy, like aimlessly following Will and Nancy around kind of bubble, so he can develop a little bit. And honestly, it makes sense to me that he gravitated towards smoking weed because, God, if you had been through everything he'd been through in the past 3 years, wouldn't you?
Yeah, honestly. It makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it adds a layer of needed humor and a lot of the stuff, a lot of the teen angst drama going on with our other love triangle. And I have so many thoughts about our other love triangle. And I think it actually adds, when their journey becomes clear, what's going to happen with the 4 boys trying to get to 11, he adds a lot by being kind of the counterpart to Eddie, where it's like Jonathan and Will and Mike know they can't explain this to Argyle. Like, it's one thing to explain to Eddie, who's been stuck in Hawkins for all the disasters that have gone down. It makes it a little easier to swallow. They have no way to explain this to Argyle at all. So it adds an interesting layer of, like, they're telling this person they need this person to work with them, but they can't fully reveal like who they truly are, which is a theme that's running through everything happening in California. The need to obfuscate your true feelings and your true identity and your true emotions. So I think on a narrative level, he works really well. I also just find it really funny. I thought it was great when he was like making a tombstone for the secret agent guy and was going to write all their names on it. And I can't remember if it's Will or Mike who was like, why are you going to write all our names on it? They're going to find us. And he just keeps blasting on with writing all their names on it. He's like, they're all common names, you know, the very common name of Argyle, which I've only otherwise heard in South Park for the Canadian comedy duo. Common name. Nah, he's great.
something I appreciate about Argyle's involvement is he's giving levity to this group of characters, but the two who need it the most are Jonathan, which we just talked about, and Will, who for the first time since the show began is not a damsel in distress.
Thank God.
Yeah, because that's always been the thing that's kind of frustrating me about his characters. You know, he's always been the one they have to save, whether he's stuck in the Upside Down or he's being possessed in season 2. I don't even remember anything about him in season 3 other than
the season 3 plotline was terrible because for half of the season it was a plotline where he was feeling distance from all his friends because he's in a state of arrested development. He was kidnapped for a year and then possessed by the mind flayer. Like he's basically missing a year and a half of his life, and he's trying to still hold on to the things that kept him with his friends, and they're moving on to girls and parties and sports and stuff. And then the second half of the season, they literally never address it again, so he can be a human tuning fork to find the fucking mind flayer. It's just like, oh my God.
Yeah, so I'm just so glad that they gave him something to do in this season.
Did you see that they accidentally have this season taking place on his birthday that apparently everyone forgot?
I like that adds another entire layer to just his plot line. Like, God, imagine doing all this dumbass shit on your birthday. Just
I love the explanation that they just forgot about his birthday.
But that seems plausible in the worst,
Fair.
like in show and out of show.
I will say that the only problem I have with that ties into another plot line. So once we get to that one, I'll talk about it. But I think it's depressingly in character for Mike and Elle to totally forget it's his birthday.
Yeah.
I think Jonathan would remember if he wasn't high out of his mind. But it's depressingly in character for the consistently third wheeling everyone, Mike and 11, to not realize it's his damn birthday.
Yeah, that's very true. So the other plot line, there's actually 2 more.
Oh, right.
So one of them is we get to see not only how Hopper survived, but how he ended up in Russia in this super secret prison. So Legault, I'll start with you. A, how do you feel about knowing how Hopper survived? And B, how do you feel about his arc just in general?
About how he survived, I mean, in a show full of just ridiculous supernatural stuff, that seemed like the most ridiculous, but okay. I could not have been less interested in the whole Hopper situation. I really think he should have stayed dead in season 3, and it really lowered the emotional value of season 3's ending by having him survive in this really ridiculous way. David Harbour plays this character so well. I absolutely love him, but sometimes you got to kill a character off. And in a show that is so filled with characters, it was just, this whole storyline just felt so unnecessary and completely stopped the plot. It has nothing to do with the plot that's going on in Hawkins, which the rest of the show was about. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it felt very clunky.
Mm-hmm.
My thing is, while I agree with a lot of that, I'm still invested because David Harbour still delivers a good performance. And one of my favorite scenes is the one where he's having a heart to heart with not Yuri, the other guy.
Enzo?
Yeah, or
yeah, I think it's Enzo. No, the guard.
Yeah, the guard. You know, he has this heart to heart about his father and all of his time in the army, and just like his whole speech about how he hurts the people he loves. I thought he delivered that really well, but objectively, I kind of have to agree. This is like the weakest of all the different subplots, and it's the one that I'm interested in, but it doesn't kind of belong with the rest of the narrative. Haylee, what about you?
Oh yeah, combined with the Murray Joyce storyline, which I kind of ball them together, this is the one that I just could not stand it. Like, for starters, like I can't believe he survived. I mean, that's kind of the least of the problems going on with this, though. Like, part of why this doesn't land for me is that Hopper in season 3 like really sucked. Like, true, just like a lot of his characterization was bad and possessive and weird in a way that seemed really inconsistent with what we'd seen of him before. But we got a little nice button on the end of season 3 where he sends that heartfelt letter to Elle that kind of ties up some of the, like, I know I did wrong. I know I didn't do this great. I know I haven't, but I always love you, all that shit. So you kind of got some sense of closure where it's like, he wasn't the greatest, but he was doing his best with a teenage daughter, and he, at the end of the day, he always loved her. Cool. I was also never invested in Hopper and Joyce as a couple or a pairing. So that to me is not a narrative hook that I care particularly about. And it feels very forced in this season. Like, the defining thing we know about Joyce in this entire series is how much she values her children. So the fact that she would fuck off to the middle of nowhere to try and rescue a dude she's not seeing just does not make sense to me. And I think that's the biggest problem with both the Russia part and the Murray and Joyce part. Like, I don't understand how Hopper survived, but I also don't see him being able to come back from some of the things he did to Joyce in season 3 and have her still be this devoted to him. And I also don't see Joyce abandoning not only her kids, but some of the Wheelers out in the middle of California with no supervision to go to Russia at the behest of a conspiracy theorist who has notedly fucked her over a couple of times. Like, it just makes no sense to me at all why this plot line happened. And like, okay, we got this nice moment where Joyce and Hopper hug, but like, again, I'm not invested in their storyline. Like, he screwed that up in season 3. Pretty definitively screwed that up in season 3. Like, it feels like when Glee would change the pairings in the show because the internet wanted them to. That's what this feels like. This feels like too many people really liked the idea of Joyce and Hopper, so they're going to brute force it into this show. It's frustrating and it's boring. The plotline is beyond boring. Like, there's not a whole lot of narrative thrust to it because it's so disconnected from what's happening both in Hawkins and California. So it doesn't feel like a natural progression, and it kind of halts the momentum of anything happening until we get to episode 7, where for some reason Russia has decided to maintain a mind flayer as some sort of Roman Colosseum style fighting force to kill inmates and gulags. Like, okay, I guess that's happening now. That was the most interesting part, but interesting in kind of like a what the fuck was that kind of way. Yeah, I really didn't like that plot line. If we want to start talking about Murray and Joyce, I have way more feelings on that side of it than Hopper's, because Hopper's plot line is getting hurt, breaking out of prison, being put back into prison, having a sad moment, breaking out of prison, getting sent back to prison, having a sad moment. It just kind of feels like a washing machine loop. I have so many feelings. I did not like that plot line at all. Like, I think the most damning thing about it is you could almost completely excise it by having Russia just kidnap Joyce. There you go. They kidnap Joyce because they know she's close to Elle. Now everything ties in together. We We can still get Hopper's speech about how he ruins everything he touches, which would make a lot more sense and would feel more natural if he was telling it to Joyce. And it would connect them to the ongoing plot.
Yeah.
Instead, we get more forced comic humor from Murray, who's a character I've never liked, and I do not understand why he's still here.
That's always kind of been the problem with certain characters who were introduced for like one season, but then people liked, or maybe the showrunners liked, so they kept them around for longer than they need to be. And yeah, that's how we have Murray sticking around for this season, and probably season 5 if he survives.
I just really hope they kill him. I just cannot stand him. Oh my God. The dude's an idiot. He should have been killed last season.
Oh, I'm so a Murray apologist. I love him. God, and he came through with that karate. It's fun. He's
okay. Him coming through with the karate, I did not expect, genuinely. That was kind of a nice payoff, but no one's going to make me like this guy, unfortunately.
That's fair.
I understand why you don't like Murray, but as a Brett Gelman fan, I just kind of accept his role in this.
I do like Brett Gelman. I think it's a writing problem because Murray was introduced so weirdly, and his function in every season has just been, well, season 3, it kind of made a degree of sense, but seasons 2 and 4, it doesn't make sense why he's there a lot of the time. Like this season especially, he's just explaining things to Joyce that should be readily evident to her. Like when she smashes that doll, she's like, oh, there's a paper in it. He's like, read it. I'm like, she could have done all this herself, and she probably would have, because she tore apart a whole town just to figure out why her magnets weren't fitting on her fridge right. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It doesn't.
Oh God, I forgot about the magnets subplot.
I kind of love that subplot because it pointed out like just how paranoid living in, almost said Forks like she was in Twilight, in Hawkins has made her. I thought it was a nice kind of way to explore Joyce, but then it went down into Hopper mad because she didn't show up to a date, and it just got really weird. I liked the beginning of it though.
Speaking of paranoia in Hawkins, it's about time this show, set like smack dab in the 80s, addresses the satanic panic.
Mm-hmm.
So Legault, you ready to talk about Jason and his whole crusade?
Oh, yes. That the actor does a good job. So please note when I'm talking badly about him, not the actor. I hated this character in the best way because he is too realistic. The way that kid had future Midwestern politician vibes radiating off of him so hard was painful. This kid comes out, basketball star. I assume he's the captain. I don't know how basketball works. Not going to pretend I do. So he's giving a speech and he's invoking the dead names of so many of the townspeople who died over summer, and comparing that to like saying they need to win the basketball game. I already hate him.
Ooh.
And he just gets progressively worse. I do wish we had seen him and Chrissy actually have a scene together before she died.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of writing that was needed, and the fact that we didn't get it, I don't know if he actually really loved her, or if he's just mad his girlfriend died, or if he actually cares, or if he's a sociopath. I can't quite get a read on that. But the turn he takes when after he's going after Eddie and he actually sees his friend die in front of him, where he's deeply in belief that the Hellfire Club really is working with the devil and Eddie's a vessel for the devil, I want to say it's insane, but again, it's so believable. And I know people are calling this out the satanic panic in the 80s, but as someone who went to high school in a small town in the Midwest, that didn't end in the 80s. That's still very real. the actor does a great job of portraying that, I don't know, severity of the character and the intensity he has and the charisma. But man, I really need him to get killed. Really need him to get killed.
He like of all the character deaths, he definitely has it coming the most. By the way, the actor's name is Mason Dye. And yeah, for playing that sort of like I'm only assuming that he's like a devout Christian, just like the way he's so like convinced that this is the devil's work, and Jason is like the vessel for all of these terrible crimes. Like, yeah, that all just adds up. Haylee, what'd you think of this subplot?
I think it was necessary at this point. Like, we're at the point where 4 seasons in and at least 25 teenagers have died in the past 2 years in this town. Like, it was starting to stretch credulity that somebody wasn't thinking that something supernatural was going on outside of our main cast. But from a historical perspective, I like that that's the angle they took. And I also think it helps that with Jason, they're kind of evoking in a lot of different ways kind of the yuppie sociopath, which isn't really a character type we've seen a whole lot. And it's a character type that actually comes up a couple of times in this season. Like, Jason has some very strong Patrick Bateman vibes going on, like speeches about morality and shit that he clearly doesn't believe in, just the general appearance of him, the clean cut, all American guy. The complete disconnect he has mentally with who his girlfriend is and who she actually was. I think I'll play devil's advocate that I think him not having a scene with Chrissy actually works really effectively, because it does show us that he literally has no idea what she was actually like, and I actually wish we'd gotten more about what Chrissy felt about him, because it felt like her spiraling out of control was all related to her family and her mother. I would have liked to have seen something about, like, how does she actually feel about Jason? Like, does Jason feed into her insecurities and is making her a target for Vecna? Does she think Jason sees her at all for what she is? Was she pregnant? Like, I know the show is probably not going for that based on everything coding and eating disorder, but was Chrissy pregnant is probably something they should have resolved, because there was a lot of similar framing there between bulimia and pregnancy. But I also think the actor is really impressive, because that's a role that can totally turn into scenery chewing, and you've got to compete with other characters like Billy, who are able to make their menace so like ominous and tense and whatnot. And the actor does an extremely good job. I think the progression of the plot line is one of the few that actually works with the truncated season, because where we end with that plot line is basically like the entire town is going to brutalize these 5 kids if something is not done immediately. And I think that's a great place to leave the menace of that plot line. I like the approach to the satanic panic element there. So it's not so much the psychological abuses that happened in a lot of these cases where kids are testifying about completely nonsensical things and everyone just got swept up in a panic. It's very real. It's a very real assumption for these people to make. And because we already had budding Patrick Bateman demonstrate his oratory skills, it makes sense that a speech from someone like him would inflame this kind of anger and viciousness in a town that's been so brutally beat down by so many different sides over the past couple of years. Yeah, I really liked his character. I also liked that his character gave us an outlet to see, to have Lucas build character, because Lucas has been one of the most underutilized characters in the whole show, I think. And this season gives him a lot to do, both with not remembering this character's name now, the captain that we've been talking about, but also with Max as well. Like, he feels the most realistically trapped, I think, of all of the characters. Like he's trying to make new friends because he doesn't want to stay in the same bucket that his friends are staying in. He wants to make new friends. He wants to improve himself. He wants to be something better. He thinks he finds something better, but it's way worse. And he wants, regardless of if his relationship works out, he wants his friends to be safe. So there's a lot of interesting push and pulls with Lucas that I think this captain is helping to bring out too. So
yeah, no, I agree with that everything about Jason and all of his teammates, it does give Lucas a bit more meat on the bones of his character arc. But I think the standout of the returning cast, well, there's two. The first one is obviously Lucas's sister Erica, who is just she's a badass in every way imaginable.
I'm so glad they figured out what to do with her character. She was nigh insufferable in season 3, and they kind of figured out how to rein it in.
Yeah, and just the fact that she gets to be more directly involved in the main plot is it's fun. It's fun to have her be a more active role and not just the stereotypical little sister. Legault, how do you feel about Erica's involvement?
Oh, Erica's my favorite character. She's the best kind of sass. And I love that she's definitely one of the more important characters because she's in this really interesting role this season where she's kind of being a voice of reason for the adults and trying to defend the rest of the kids in Hawkins. It's not working very well, but she's at least trying. And she's coming in with a lot of sense. And I think a lot more people listen to her over, let's say, Dustin, who everyone kind of ignores. So, yeah, I absolutely love her. And the actor, I think it's Pariah Ferguson, is doing just a phenomenal job.
Yeah, she's like the bridge between the two generations. Even though she's like the youngest, she's just enough removed from like the core cast that she can be that voice of reason. And then the other standout obviously is Sadie Sink doing a bang up job as Max, who is going through so much trauma after what happened at the end of season 3. And would all of us here agree that episode 4 is one of the best episodes of this season, if not the series as a whole?
Yeah, this is the best. That's the best episode of the season by far.
I thought 100%. Episode 7 was the best. I hear everyone saying 4, like it was good. It just didn't wow me like episode 7 did.
To be fair, I think 7 is the number 2 for me.
Same.
The power of that running up that hill sequence is so strong, I think.
Yeah,
I didn't know that song had come out in the 80s. There was a lot of songs like that where I was like, wow, that's an 80s song. I think that tripped me up a little bit.
Is that because the remix came out like a few years ago, so everyone just kind of assumes that it's a more modern song?
Yeah, I'd only ever heard the cover.
There's been a couple of covers that have come out that came out in like the 2000s. I think the Placebo one, if you were an emo kid, the Placebo one was a big deal. That was how I first heard that song. And then the remix that you're talking about, that was a big deal just a couple of years ago. The Running Up That Hill also has a timeless quality to it. Like the production of it is extremely modern. It feels like Sophie or the late Sophie or like a Caroline Polachek could have written something like this. So I totally get why people are like, whoa, what's this? And like streaming the hell out of it because it's really timeless. But I also get why people are like, this is an 80s song? Really?
Well, it works either way for that scene.
Yeah, regardless of what episode is the best, that sequence I think is the best. Like, just, I really thought they were going to kill her. I really thought she was going to die. And it's ridiculous because it's like, I've seen the trailer, she's in scenes that haven't happened yet. But the way they constructed that whole sequence with the music and the sound editing and the visuals and not enough things can be said about Sadie Sink, who, like, every season there's like a different acting standout, and my God, she's just doing so much here to convey like the deep wellspring of pain inside of her. Like, she had to deal with an abusive stepfather. She lost a brother that she has understandable, extremely complex feelings about. She had to watch him die in an extremely brutal manner. At the same time, she had to watch her best friend have a slug just completely removed from her leg and all kinds of other horrific shit. She doesn't feel like anyone can relate to her. And she's dealing with a chronic illness that turns out has been brought on by Vecna. Like, that's a lot to convey for any actor, much less a young actor. And she nails it. She really nails it.
Yeah, no, she is just spectacular in this season. Now, the one subplot we haven't gotten to yet is 11, where we left off last season. She lost her powers, no longer has her abilities, and she has left Hawkins to move in with the Byers. And naturally, because this is high school and she's kind of different, of course they got to show her getting bullied, because, you know, the Stephen King comparisons are still kind of there. But how do you guys feel about her training sequences in, I guess what they're calling it, Project Nina? Haylee, we'll start with you.
So before we get too far into that, I want to spend approximately 5 hours talking about how Will kept acting like he was going to pick the worst possible time to come out to Mike at every opportunity. Like, 11 brain, someone with a skate. Oh, time for some really deep eye contact. I'm like, Will, no, this is a bad time to do that. And it was constant. I actually really enjoyed that element of it, where it's just like, he's being so blatantly obvious and no one is paying attention to him. Like, I just really wanted to bring that up because it's just, I know it'll probably get resolved in the last 2 episodes, but it was starting to get really comical how, like, anytime anything bad happened to 11, Will would be like looking at her like, oh no, not again. And then he'd see Mike and be like, oh my God, it's Mike. Just like, Will, focus on the task at hand. Will, I understand you find him attractive. So does the internet. Like, just get back to what 11 just brained a girl with a skate. Figure it out. The Project Nina stuff, though, was, I think, interesting. It really picked up in the last 2 episodes once I started figuring out, like, oh, right, the orderly is obviously Vecna. There's something deeper going on here. We haven't heard anything about 11 suggesting that she caused a massacre. So this new bit of information is like suspect anyways. But and also just seeing Brenner again, I was like, oh, fuck that guy. Why is he here? And I really appreciate that the show clearly is not trying to redeem him in any way, because I was worried that's where it was going. But no, it's very clear that Owens is like, we don't want you here. The only reason you're here is because you're the only person that can actually help this girl. And the second we sense that you're doing something off, you're gone. And he already got close to that line anyways. I was like, okay, I appreciate that. And it's interesting to have 11 confront her abuser again to try and save everyone she loves. Like, there's a lot of interesting metaphors for dealing with buried pain in this season, like with Max and the music and freeing herself from Vecna, just Vecna in general, everything with the Creoles. Like, thematically, I don't like that Brenner's back because dude's a fucking asshole, but I like that we're more deeply exploring this with 11. Like, I would say for the past 2 seasons, 11's kind of plot line has been to get caught up in some weird machinations so that she can't just solve the problem immediately with the season, you know? And that gets a little old. I appreciate that her not having her powers has led to her confronting her history of being bullied, her history that has always framed her as a victim and one that violently lashes out and blames her for fighting back against people who have done way worse to her. And then actually allowing her to understand like the circumstances of how she got to where she is and the memory she's buried and what she needs to do to kind of overcome still the deep shame and feelings of like the self-loathing, the calling herself a monster and everything. It seems like the way the season is going, it's setting her up to actually kind of be the triumphant hero that the writing lazily let her be at the end of seasons 2 and 3. So I definitely want to see what happens when she fully regains the use of her powers, because we're seeing flickers of it. And the season again, I just cannot say enough worse things about where this season cuts off. I swear to God. Like, just put the whole thing up. I don't understand it.
Legault, is this the reason why episode 7 is your favorite?
Episode 7 is definitely my favorite, specifically for Jamie Campbell Bower's performance. Just utterly mesmerizing. I thought he really blew it out of the park. That's not an expression, but I'm going to maintain it. Yeah, he did a phenomenal job, and the whole thing was just so interesting. And I did like that we mainly focused on that storyline and the Hawkins storyline. We didn't see the kids in California at all. We still went to Russia, but I kind of fast forwarded through that, to be honest, to just stick to this episode. I just thought it was edited and put together in a way that was a lot more interesting than the first 6 episodes for me. But kind of what Haylee was saying, to go a little bit back about Will and being obvious, I think the writing in terms of what's going on with Will in this season is horrible. And worse, like the interviews that Duffer Brothers have been giving, it's just kind of making me rage. I want to flip a table. Like at the end of the day, they really better resolve things in these next 2 episodes with him, or I'm going to be deeply upset.
I can understand that, because it's they're dancing around the bush too much when it comes to Will's sexuality. Either say he is or say he isn't. I don't really agree with the idea of his sexuality being like a reveal, like, you know, like revealing the identity of like a villain. His sexuality should have just been part of his character, like from the start. Or maybe not, because in the first 2 seasons, like the kids were, you know, busy being kids and dealing with all of the upside down stuff. But as they're getting older and, you know, figuring out their own identities, yeah, that really should have been addressed sooner.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. If they don't commit to something at the end of this season, it's like the biggest queer baiting crock of shit since Sherlock at this point. Like, the dude brought an Alan Turing project to school. Like, there's coding, and then there's like coding. But I also don't want this to turn into a thing where Will and Mike have the obvious talk about it and then Will dies, because that also feels like it could be a possibility. I'm just like, he's got the sad painting of sad. This is not seem like it's going to go in a good direction. Honestly, I feel like the one moment where Will's inappropriate eye gazes could have worked is when they were both sitting on that car and talking about stuff. And it's like, they should have just ended this point there and then, so that the rest of the season is them working together to get 11, because it's pretty obvious from a character perspective that both of them can sense the elephant in the room, or that there is an elephant in the room, at least Mike's not bright, so I'm gonna caveat that maybe he somehow has not picked up on this, but they need to do something with it. Like at this point, like I don't want to give the at the same time I want to give the Duffer Brothers the benefit of the doubt that they don't want to spoil anything for the last 2 episodes, but also don't want to give them the benefit of the doubt, because I think every Supernatural fan knows what it's what you think actually means. But yeah, like it's something they've been weaving in since season 3, and they need to pull the trigger on it regardless of how it ends, or not regardless of how it ends, because if they pull the trigger on it and kill Will, that's just a really bad message. But they need to pull the trigger on it regardless. And it's kind of sad coming off of the season with Robin, where they actually did handle her sexuality fairly well and are continuing to handle it fairly well. But poor Will, he's stuck with this bowl cut. He's got terrible plot lines every season. And this one actually has the potential to be a little interesting, but it's like they're treating it like it needs to be some big reveal. It's like, it's not a reveal. Like the people who are attuned to be able to see this reveal already know it's coming. And the people who don't, like, I'm sorry, I don't know how you don't figure this out at this point. Like, it's just let it happen. Christ.
Also,
you know,
it
like,
shouldn't be a reveal. That should not be a reveal. It's 2022, Duffer Brothers. You make television. Like you're cued in to what people say and how they talk about TV series, and should absolutely know better than to make that a reveal. So either they're queer baiting or they're just doing a terrible job of being human beings.
Yeah. I really want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, kind of like what you said, the bar for representation has risen exponentially high. I know I bring this up every opportunity, but for as much hot water as Disney has been in other regards, the Owl House is still probably the best for that demographic in terms of LGBT representation. And right now, Stranger Things is like at least 10 steps below that. Now,
also, sorry, I just want to cut in. I want to make it clear when I was talking about like reveal, I don't mean like making it a huge plot point. I mean Will revealing it to Mike, because it feels like that's where that's gearing towards. I agree this should not be a fucking thing to turn the entire plot on. But that's kind of where we're going, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess.
Moving on to another point of discussion, something I kind of brought up earlier, the fact that this season is being split in a honestly kind of awkward fashion. Earlier, Legault and I were kind of talking behind the scenes, debating the difference between the Netflix binge model and the more traditional weekly release. And I was kind of curious, do you think this season of Stranger Things should have been released just all at once, or would this have benefited from like something that Amazon does where they'll give you the first 3 episodes and then follow it up weekly? Legault, I'll let you start first.
I actually think Netflix has done this before, and I think it's a good compromise, and it's similar to what they did with this, but not quite the same. So I know they did this with, oh my gosh, Masters of the Universe Revelation, where they released like the first 5 episodes, and then they waited to like the next month, so people would have to pay for a full month of their service to release the next 5 episodes. I think something like that is fine. I do prefer a binge model. If it's weekly, I absolutely forget about it. Like for Amazon Prime, The Boys just came out. I'm just going to wait till it's all out and watch it all at once. I know people who are watching this season of Stranger Things, 1 episode a week. I mean, honestly, however you want to watch it is fine, provided I guess you don't care about spoilers. Watch it however you want. By the time next season comes out, you will have watched it, and how you watched it kind of doesn't matter. So it really just hinges on what's the best model for the company, and considering, how many people tuned in to watch or how many hours are watched. I think this is the biggest premiere weekend they've ever had. And I'm looking, I think they said they had 287 million hours watched. And I divided it by the length of the show. So that means like 31 million households watched it. If my math is right, it might not be. I'm not a mathematician. So that's I mean, a lot of people are watching this, and I don't mind like the waiting like the 1 month to ensure that, you know, people are paying the next month to see the second part of the season or whatever. It's fine. It's a month, and I don't like not binging, so this works for me very well personally.
Haylee,
what about you?
So just given the state of Netflix right now, I think if they were going to do an experiment with releasing things weekly, it should have been this. I think that might have, they seem very married to the model they created and kind of came up with a compromise that doesn't really benefit their creators or them. Like, they did have a huge number of eyeballs on this because this is like their premiere series at this point. But I think this would have been the perfect time to experiment with a weekly drop, especially looking at something like what Apple TV had with Severance, where so much of Stranger Things is dependent on the I need to watch this now, the next episode now factor, which it does benefit binging for sure, but Severance just keeps growing and growing and growing. Like, I hadn't heard of it when it started, and it's become a pretty intensely popular show with similar kind of, I don't want to say post-apocalyptic, but like current era kind of technology and supernatural fears and anxieties attached to it. Personally, I'm not the biggest binge watcher, so I've never been like wanting people to not put things all up in a batch, because I just know that's not for me, and I'll get to it when I get to it. Purely from the perspective of Netflix has a problem and they need to fix it, like that's what their executives are thinking. I wonder why they came to this compromise, because it really does cut off the series at a weird point. Like, there is some narrative fulfillment in the last moments being us seeing the full picture of how Vecna came to be, but there's a lot of stuff that's kind of left hanging in a way that you can tell the creators didn't want it hanging, mainly Nancy's plot line. Like, it's pretty obvious they did not they didn't want Nancy to be that much of a cliffhanger, because she's in the middle of the episode. Her plot ends in the middle of the episode. But like, I guess I would like to know how they came to this decision to drop the 7 episodes they had and then about a month later. Like, that, it seems like an odd place to cut the series and then put the rest on. Unless it turns out the last 2 episodes are like 2.5 hours long each, then I'll be like, okay, that I get why they did that now. But I think
I'm looking up the run times for those last 2 episodes just to confirm whether or not that is the reason. Because while I can kind of see from a narrative perspective the fact that 7 ends with like the reveal that the orderly is Vecna, and I can see that being like a unnatural sort of break point. I also think, you know, with the other storylines being unresolved, it would have been better to just put it out all at once.
I think they just, to wrap that up, I think they just needed to commit to one extreme or another, honestly. Like, they needed to be like, okay, our ratings are not doing great. We're releasing this once a week to build up our subscriber base across a couple of months, or we're dropping this whole thing and seeing if it can mark a spike or a change in our numbers for the next couple of months. The way they did it now, I'm not quite sure what they were aiming for.
So the Duffer Brothers did say that they released what is essentially the first 2 acts of season 4, and the last 2 episodes are the 3rd act, and that was the cutting point. But the issue with Stranger Things is that this is essentially just a, I don't know, like 12-hour movie, basically. So there's never going to be a good point to say like, okay, divide it here, because that's not what it is. It's a very long movie. And that's why I also think Stranger Things, specifically Stranger Things, doesn't really work well with the week to week release date the way that almost every other television show would work perfectly fine with.
Yeah, that's a good point. And as I kind of described earlier, whenever I'm watching like a new season of Stranger Things, I have to finish it in like that day. I don't think I can say watch one night 3 episodes and then 2 the next day and then so on and so forth. If I'm like invested in the storyline, which I am, then I have to just see it through that day. So anything we haven't brought up yet about this season?
We kind of wanted to mention a little bit about Vecna versus Dr. Brenner. I know Haylee said that they thought that it didn't look like Dr. Brenner was getting absolved of his wrongdoings, but I kind of feel like it really does look like that by having Vecna be this kind of sociopathic character. It does sort of look like Dr. Brenner's kind of being vindicated in his action when really the dude is like abducting, isolating, and torturing children. He should be the ultimate bad guy. Like no one should be worse than him. He's the big bad. And he should be the reason that Vecna is a big bad. I think that's just a more interesting storyline there, rather than, oh, this kid's weird, so he's gonna weird and be a serial killer, well, a supernatural serial killer, I guess, when he could have been this like tortured human being who just really went down a bad path due to trauma. I just think that's so much more fascinating, and it creates a situation where Elle is going to be have a lot more reservation about, you know, whatever the final battle is going to end up being between them. I don't know. I think Dr. Brenner really needs to die because he's awful.
I will agree. I would agree with that. I was just thinking perhaps if they spent less time on these more like outside subplots, they could have given like Dr. Brenner a little bit more substance other than just being the sort of necessary evil in order to stop Vecna. Like if he was more, I mean, he's already like the worst person ever, but the way it's coming off in this season, it does kind of seem like his, like, yes, he's evil, but he's kind of being shoved aside for to develop Vecna as like the big bad, when I think I think it might have been just a little bit more interesting if he was like more, if he had more of a hand in creating Vecna, so to speak.
Yeah, I think they needed to make more of the subtext actual text in the show. I'll totally agree with that. I think because I rewatched the show before watching season 4, and I think with everything we know about Brenner fresh in your mind, you're like, oh God, yeah, obviously he had something to do with this, you know, number one, it's that he did all this, but it's not, we don't get enough of like us of being reminded who Brenner is to kind of maybe fully carry that off. Like definitely could have used more explanation there.
Actually, Haylee, since you just rewatched season 1, I genuinely don't remember. Did Brenner die in the first season, or did he just kind of go off into the sunset?
Now I'm like, oh no, now I can't remember, and I just watched this, but I'm pretty sure they pretty heavily implied he was dead.
So they had him being attacked by the Demogorgon.
That's what I thought. They don't show his body.
Yeah, generally the rule is if you don't see a body, he's not dead.
Right.
I wish
That's
Stranger
a good
Things
point.
would
That's a good
commit-
point.
I wish Stranger Things would commit more to just killing people you don't see the bodies for. Hopper, Brenner, it would just work out better in the end for everybody.
Yes.
They do seem to abuse that no body, no confirmation rule.
Mm-hmm.
The only other thing I have left that we haven't mentioned is hashtag justice for Barb. What are the scarier moments in this season is Nancy finally seeing Barb in the Upside Down. Who knew Barb would be still such a standout character 3 seasons later.
I like the way that this season is confronting Nancy's guilt over that better than when she confronted her guilt over it in season 2. But I still wonder why that's a well we're returning to.
Especially since we've already returned to it.
That's really it. Nancy should have Nancy's whole season-long plot line is her feeling the pull between California with Jonathan and Hawkins with Steve and everyone else. So for this last episode to be like, oh, right, remember when you thought you killed your best friend is just really jarring. You would think that Vecna would be preying more on her guilt over clearly not wanting to be with Jonathan anymore, but not wanting to pull the trigger on that either. It just felt a little narratively muddled. I don't disagree with it in theory. I wish there had been something laid down for it in this season to make us understand why it's popping up again.
I mean, for me, she did have the whole thing in season 2 where they're getting hashtag justice for Barb, but I mean, her friend died, and any teenager seeing their rotting corpse of a friend would be so traumatic. And honestly, I don't know where the majority of people are on this. I really don't care about her and Jonathan, and if they cut to one more thing of her and Jonathan, I would have run my head through a wall. So I was happy that they avoided that. But actually, you know what? No one's ever talking about justice for Benny, who died in season 1, and they made it look like a suicide just because he tried to help Elle. And now some basketball players are vandalizing his restaurant, which is closed down, which I think is far more upsetting. Justice for Benny.
I miss Benny. Yeah, I fully agree with you that Nancy and Jonathan are also extremely played out. That's I can't believe we're going back to the Nancy, Jonathan, Steve love triangle like that. Oh my God. I was like, I cannot believe we're doing this right now. Keep them all single. Who cares?
Yes.
Pair her off with Robin if you must pair her off with somebody. But oh my God, I feel like we've done some variation of this plot every single season, and it never gets any more interesting. It never does.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. And I'll be honest, there were moments in the season where I was like, Nancy and Robin together? ? That would have at least been something different. But nope, we gotta do the love triangle again.
I will say this, my man Steve didn't get the shit kicked out. No, he did get the shit kicked out of him. What's wrong with me? He did. I was about to be like character development, but no, he just got the shit kicked out of him by bats. At least it wasn't angry humans this time, I suppose. Progress. Steve. I don't like how many death flags they're throwing up for Steve. Steve is my favorite character. If they kill Steve, I'm pretty much I will be a distressed widow. Poor Steve. But I really don't want Steve to die. He brings something that this show desperately needs, which is just an overwhelming sense of not following and failure. He's wonderful. He's hilariously bad at what he's chosen to do with his life, but he's endearing about it. And also just his interplay with Dustin has gotten so good. And
it has.
it gives both of them something to do, because Dustin was also by season 2 kind of feeling like, why is Dustin still here? And that kind of put a jolt into both of those characters, that relationship. And I think it's been great for the show.
Yeah. If nothing else, this season has done a really good job of mixing up the character dynamics. Everything from Mike and Will on the stoner comedy adventure in California to the main plot in Hawkins to, while it doesn't necessarily work, I can at least kind of see what they're doing with like the Hopper stuff. But as a whole, I think season 4 is doing a lot more interesting stuff with these characters than in previous seasons. It's not always great. We've certainly expressed our issues, but overall, I'm just a huge fan of season 4 so far. So we're coming to the end of this podcast. Legault, any final thoughts?
I mean, final thoughts. It's a beautiful looking show, fantastic characters. This season is a standout amongst the 4 seasons, and I'm so excited to see those last 2 ridiculously long episodes.
Oh yeah, I think episode 9 is like 2.5 hours or
it's
something.
2 hours and 19 minutes.
Okay, so they probably did break it up because the last 2 episodes are just ridiculous in length. Is that what it is, you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Stop. Okay.
So Haylee, your final thoughts on Stranger Things season 4?
Like I said at the beginning, I think it's the best of the season so far. The characters, with like a couple of exceptions, they really find ways to make them work. They're not shuffling any to the side anymore. The interplay between the storylines is really well done. I didn't get a chance to mention it, but I like also the interplay of bringing in new elements to the supernatural mythology this season, but also building on the ones from seasons before. Some of the previous seasons have felt kind of like standalone things, and they make a real effort here to kind of bridge together, like, what is the full Upside Down? What lives here? How does Elle fit into this world? And I think that makes it a lot more effective, knowing that this is all part of one singular entity and journey that's interplayed with each other. It's not perfect. No seasons of Stranger Things has ever been perfect, but if you don't mind fast forwarding through some stuff that's not relevant, or if you really like Joyce and Hopper, you'll be fine. I think definitely a strong reminder of why this show picked up so much and why it's such a cultural phenomenon.
Indeed. Yeah, I think if I was gonna rank the seasons so far, again, my mind could very well change depending on how the final 2 episodes end. But so far, I would go 1, then 4, then 3, then 2. On the whole, I'm just deeply invested in the world building, how they're continuing to expand upon the lore of the Upside Down. The character stuff is all great, well, mostly, and really just like the performances this season have been spectacular. Overall, I just love this show, and I'm very much looking forward to these last 2 episodes. And even then, after this, we still have 1 more season to go. So yeah, there's still a lot more story to tell somehow, and I'm looking forward to how this all concludes. But until then, Legault, first of all, thank you for joining us. And where can everyone find you online?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for having me. I could predominantly be found on the YouTubes at Legoland13, which is LEGAULTLAND numbers 13.
And Haley, where can everyone find you or not find you?
Don't look for me. I'm in the upside down. I've disappeared from all things. No, as always, I'm in the Renegade Pop Culture Facebook group. If you would like to debate me on the merits of the Joyce Hopper plotline, that's where you can find me.
And you guys can find me on Twitter at Captain K42. You can check out my quick thoughts on letterbox.com/CoachK42. And you can find me in all the various Facebook groups just at my name. You can check out Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook and Twitter at Ren Pop Culture. We're also on YouTube. You can also find us on Podchaser, listen to all of our podcasts on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. Need an escape? So do we. That'll do it for this episode of Renegade Marquee. We will catch you guys later. Peace out.